Hey everyone, it's Flak. I want to start this video with a simple question. Do you know what Battlefield 5 is? Now I'm asking this because I came to a realization the other day that nobody knows exactly what Battlefield 5 is, developers included, and it's killing the game's player base. Battlefield 5 feels like Frankenstein's monster, cobbled together and clinging to life, but it wasn't always like that. When Battlefield 5 first launched, there were some tremendous missteps. The delays, controversial comments by executives, and the game's approach to historical events all alienated some fans. Still, I don't think you could say Battlefield 5 didn't have a clearly defined personality and direction. Now, you might not have agreed with it, but at least you knew what it was. At launch, it presented a grittier, more hardcore version of the Battlefield mechanics that many people had grown to love. The time to kill was lower compared to previous games, requiring more tactical thinking and rewarding skilled players willing to take risks. The impact of poor decisions in combat was also amplified, and many in the community found the more competitive presentation fun and addictive, myself included. Players also had to contend with another new layer in the gameplay meta, something called attrition. This mechanic limited player health regeneration, supplies, and gadgets in an effort to create more space for team play. Now, personally, I enjoyed attrition as it forced me to think on my feet, be more conscious of the resources at my disposal, and size up situations before committing to them. But attrition was also frustrating at times. Too often you'd find yourself in need of ammo or health, next to a teammate with the ability to help you, but one who also had the situational awareness of a buttstock. Both the TTK and attrition helped Battlefield 5 carve out an identity against the backdrop of other games in the series. Over time, however, DICE gradually dismantled everything that made the game unique. Just a few weeks into Battlefield 5's lifespan, developers tried to change the time to kill values. In a press release underlining the need for TTK changes, then community manager Dan Mitri pointed the finger directly at churn, an industry buzzword describing when players abandon a game. And at the time, Mitri said players, quote, may be getting frustrated with dying too fast that they choose not to log back in and learn how to become more proficient at Battlefield 5, end quote. The TTK changes made the game's combat a bit more forgiving, particularly at range, but the reaction from the Battlefield community was violent. So much so, DICE reversed the changes less than a week after rolling them out. To make matters worse, developers had even acknowledged the community didn't ask for the changes, yet had pushed forward anyway. For many, this was just another way DICE was arrogantly ignoring a loyal and passionate fan base. They say the definition of madness is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's simply mind-boggling then that DICE did nearly the exact same thing a year later. Predictably, the TTK changes were not well received, as evidenced by a number of death threats against Battlefield developers and community managers. This time, however, DICE didn't fully roll back the changes, instead opting for some fine-tuning. However, developers paid for the changes at the cost of more community goodwill. And attrition also didn't survive 2019. Over the course of several patches, DICE gutted the system, granting players more ammunition at spawn, allowing players to grab packs of ammo or health from oblivious teammates with a crate equipped, and changing the way health regenerates. So from a gameplay perspective, little remains to distinguish Battlefield 5 from other games in the series, except for the launch controversies and its less than redeeming qualities. DICE also muddled the game's direction by failing to deliver on expectations for post-launch content. Battlefield 5's cooperative game mode, Combined Arms, was initially touted as a mode with great replayability. At the center of it all was supposed to be a new system called the Mission Generator. According to creative director Lars Gustafsson, Combined Arms would support, quote, dynamic objectives and narratives in order to constantly keep that cooperative experience feeling fresh and challenging, end quote. Now, what was delivered after launch was a far cry from such a description. Combined Arms featured a series of missions with fixed objectives and quickly grew stale. Poor AI also didn't add to that experience, and it lacked a matchmaking system to truly make it accessible. Similarly, the reception for the game's Battle Royale mode, Firestorm, was lukewarm as it was mercilessly compared to other games like PUBG and EA's own Apex Legends. Although Firestorm had good bones, it was shredded for the lack of a death crate system, and the promised support for the mode never materialized. The decision to tie Firestorm to Battlefield 5's price tag also crippled the mode. Many players had high hopes for Firestorm, especially since it was given extra development time. Yet again, however, expectations were not met, and unfortunately, it wouldn't be the last time. Although Battlefield 5's Tides of War live service appears to finally be hitting its stride in terms of content, it too initially failed to meet expectations, most notably with the Al Sundan map. Despite the map going live for Team Deathmatch and Squad Conquest on schedule, stability issues delayed its release for Conquest and Breakthrough by 3 months. Many players also expected the Lofoten Islands and Provence maps to feature Conquest, when the reality was they only supported smaller game modes. DICE also made some perplexing decisions to create and then remove variations of game modes that were well received by the community, namely Grind and Outpost. These do still occasionally appear, but there's no apparent rhyme or reason to their return and departure, and naturally hopping on a game and discovering your favorite game mode missing will simultaneously both confuse and upset a player. The final straw for many was Battlefield 5's promised community games. Many players were expecting an experience reminiscent of the rental server program from Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1. These offered deep customization options and the opportunity to build a community around a game. Now, what players actually received, especially after it being delayed, was to many a tremendous waste of time. And although free community games offered no personalization options to actually build a community identity, the servers aren't persistent, erasing any hope community leaders had of creating a reliable space to develop and moderate to their own standards. DICE has also failed to deliver on some expectations outright. Vehicle customization was due out in December 2018 and is still coming soon. Meanwhile, Battlefield 5's competitive 5v5 game mode expected in Tides of War Chapter 4 was scrapped in its entirety. Now, I don't think anyone was particularly excited for that last one, but it is just another example of reality failing to meet expectations. Yet, perhaps the greatest detriment to the community's relationship with Battlefield 5 has been quality control. Battlefield players hold their collective breath every time a new patch drops, never knowing if changes will work properly or if it'll render parts of the game unplayable for weeks until the next patch comes out. And sadly, this has happened multiple times. Infinite loading screens, invisible players, assignment tracking issues, company coin problems, getting stuck in the downstate, and hard crashes are just a few of the game-breaking issues Battlefield 5 has struggled with over the course of its short life. It's not a pleasant experience to boot up a game and never know what's going to happen, and that's especially true for PC players who also have to contend with widespread cheating. Developers haven't been able to solve the issues plaguing this part of the community, and it's reportedly particularly troublesome in Asia. Reddit is full of reports of cheaters going unpunished for weeks, and that's just not acceptable. A functional anti-cheat system is a reasonable expectation for a AAA game. Taking stock of everything that we've discussed in this video, Battlefield 5 feels like a game still in development. It's not what it was at launch, for better or worse, and it has had some successes, but it just seems to have lost direction. Looking for the root of the problem, Battlefield 5 feels like we're all on board a train steaming ahead at full speed while the developers try desperately to build the track moments before we cross over it. The game travels up and down and veers left and right at breakneck speed, with no inclination as to where it's actually headed. And that's stressful enough for passengers to bail out in any given opportunity, and many have and will continue to do so until that changes. Games are supposed to be fun. We handle uncertainties and nuisances every day in real life because we have to. We turn to games to escape that. The moment a game creates more stress than enjoyment, players turn it off, and you can't really blame them. We've been told Battlefield 5 is going to get better for over a year, and to their credit, DICE have in some ways delivered. Unfortunately, much of that has been overshadowed by the game's problems, and this also doesn't have any kind of easy push-button solution. EA can't legally reveal plans beyond a certain time frame, which seems to be both a convenient defense and its undoing at the same time. The period before a game's launch is sort of a golden opportunity to set expectations, and it might be the only one you get. Still, DICE have clawed their way back from a similar situation. Star Wars Battlefront 2 received the proper resources and benefited from a clear direction later in its life. Its current active player numbers haven't quite hit those of launch figures, but it is a tremendous tale of redemption for developers. Even if players didn't return to Battlefront 2, DICE forged tighter bonds with the community by focusing on what players want. Regardless, if EA and DICE want to repeat that same tale of resurrection with Battlefield 5, they ought to take a long look in the mirror and figure out exactly what the game is and where it's headed. If they don't, it's doomed to wander the earth like the aforementioned Frankenstein's monster before meeting its end in a fire of its own creation. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what DICE can do to get the Battlefield 5 train back on track. It's clear the game needs more attention from developers, both in terms of clearly outlining where we're headed and putting together a larger team to actually deliver on expectations. If EA doesn't provide DICE with the resources to do this, Battlefield 5 will continue to hemorrhage its player base. And even if you consider Battlefield 5 a lost cause, there is a legacy being formed right now, and that will determine how players react to future Battlefield games and future live service. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If not, a dislike, and make sure to tell me in the comments what you think about the current direction of Battlefield 5. I asked a few of you on Twitter if the game had a clear direction, and the results were, we'll say, pretty polarizing. So, tell me what you think DICE needs to do to get Battlefield 5 where it needs to go. Sharing this video helps out the channel a ton, and if you want to continue this discussion, say hello on social media like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You'll find the links down below in the description. Before you go, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell for the latest Battlefield news. As always, thanks for watching.